You seem a little unsure, clerk. I call the meeting to order. The clerk is advised that we have a quorum and the witnesses were tested.
I know we're about to start with the witnesses, but if possible, I'd like to move a quick motion about the timelines for submissions for amendments, if I may.
Okay. If you could just let me get formally into the meeting, and then I will come to you. Welcome to meeting number 60 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23, 2020, and therefore members are attending in person and virtually using a remote Zoom application. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to make a few comments for the benefits of witnesses and members. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. For those participating virtually, use the raised hand function. Before speaking, click on the microphone icon to activate your own mic. For those in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. Your microphone will be controlled by the proceedings officer, and the clerk and I will manage the speaking order. You may speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available. If there is a loss of interpretation services, please get my attention by raising your hand. We'll suspend while it is being corrected. I would like to remind all participants that screenshots are not allowed to be taken and are not permitted. Should, again, any technical issues arise, please get my attention by raising your hand. We'll suspend while they're being dealt with. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Friday, February the 3rd, 2023, the committee will continue its study of Bill C-35, an act respecting early learning and childcare in Canada. I would like to inform all members that the witnesses appearing virtually today have completed the technical test to check their connectivity and equipment. I would like to welcome our witness to begin our discussion with 5 minutes of opening remarks, followed by questions, and I'll introduce the witness, then I'll go to Ms. Sachs. In the first hour, we have Julie Bisnat, Program Coordinator. We have from the Fédération des communautés francophones et acadiennes du Canada, Alain Dupuis, Executive Director. Welcome in the room, Jean-Luc Racine, Representative. From the Foundation Lucie et André Chagnon, we have Dr. Christia Japel representing on screen. And we have Fanny Dagenet, Director, but we're still working out communications issue. Before I get you to begin your 5-minute comments, I will go to Ms. Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I believe the clerks received what I have sent and that it's in order. Just for the sake of housekeeping, we did lose 2 meetings because of the budget and the visit of President Biden, and making sure that we're moving along well. I'd like to propose the following, that amendments be submitted to the clerk of the committee in both official languages no later than 1 p.m. Tuesday, April 11th, 2023, that the clerk of the committee write immediately to each member who is not a member of a caucus represented on the committee and any independent members to inform them of the study of Bill C-35 by the committee, and to invite them to prepare and submit any proposed amendments to Bill C-35, which they would suggest that the committee consider during the clause-by-clause study of the bill. And the committee begin clause-by-clause consideration of the bill on April 18th, 2023. I believe you have it in both official languages, and it's in order.
Is it in order? It was distributed. Discussion? Any discussion? Ms. Gray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if we can recess for a couple minutes so that we can have a look at the motion and see how this is different than what the timeline currently is.
Yes, we can suspend for 3 minutes. Is that
And
fine?
it's unfortunate this is taking witness time, but since this just came in, we need to look at it.
Sure. We'll suspend for 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Suspend. We'll resume. The committee has before it a motion that's deemed in order, and any discussion on the motion before the committee? I have Ms. Sachs, and then who wants? Ms. Sachs, and then okay, Ms. Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this was presented more as a friendly motion to keep the train moving, per se. If you look at the timeline of April 11th, that gives members a week to really sit and digest and the information and be well prepared so that when we come back, we can do the important work that needs to be done on the clause by clause. It's just in light of the fact that time got eaten up between the budget and President Biden. Usually there's one motion that tracks out the timeline on this, and we got a little lost in the shuffle. So this was just an effort to put us back on track so that we can get to the important work of going through the legislation.
Happy to discuss this motion further, but right now what I would suggest is that we move to adjourn this motion so that we can get to the witnesses and we can talk about this at committee business. I don't want to waste the witnesses' time.
A motion to adjourn is debate on the motion. Let's be clear on your motion is to suspend debate on the motion.
That's right.
And resume with the committee.
That's right.
Which I have to call a vote on. Yeah. Okay, you have the motion.
We can call the vote, Chair.
Yes. Just so we're clear, we're calling the vote on to suspend, to suspend debate on the motion of Ms. Sachs.
There's no debate?
Well, no, because
called the vote.
it's to adjourn.
Order? Point of order then? Point of order, Mr. Chair, our staff don't have a copy of the motion, so it would be normal protocol that our parliamentary staff that are here, they actually don't even have a copy of the motion.
But, yeah, you have a copy.
Right.
The members of the committee have the motion, and
And it is in order.
yes, and the motion, and it was in order. I only deal with the committee members, Ms. Gray, and the motion of Ms. Ferrari was to adjourn.
Suspend to tomorrow.
Suspend, yes.
When we
Debate-
actually have committee business scheduled to
debate
discuss.
on the motion. So I will call a vote on the motion of Ms. Ferrari. So everybody's clear. Clerk, instruct what they're voting on.
Yeah.
But so the committee's clear. You're voting on the motion of Ms. Ferrari to suspend a debate on the motion of Ms. Sachs. So we can go to the witness.
Okay. Mr. Long?
No.
Ms. Sachs? Mr. Ali?
No.
Mr. Cotto? No. Mr. Van Bynen? No. Ms. Gray?
Yes?
Mr. Aitchison?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Ferrari?
Yes.
Madame Bérubé?
Oui.
And Ms. Gazan?
No.
Yes pour 5, 5, nays count 6, 6.
Okay, motion Ms. Ferrari defeated. We'll resume debate on the motion of Ms. Sachs.
Chair, I move to call the vote on the main motion.
Ms. Gray?
So I was looking for debate on I had my hand up, so we can discuss?
Yes.
So, so first of all, this is being tabled at the beginning of the meeting. We have witnesses that have been very generous with their time, and they're not, they're not allowed here. It's unfortunate that this wasn't done during a questioning time of the party that's bringing this forth. But I first of all have a question to the clerk. Do we have all of the submissions in that have been submitted, all translated and sent to MPs?
No, there are still some that are with translation at the moment.
Okay, and so do you have an estimated timeline when those might be coming in?
No, I can
Okay.
request.
So that in itself means that we are asked to come up with amendments, potentially, on this very important piece of legislation without having all of the submissions from stakeholders across the country, from individual people, from organizations, from anyone that wants to speak on this. And normally, when we're dealing with this type of situation, we would wait until we have all of those submissions in. We just heard that we don't know when we'll be getting all of those. So to bump the timeline up even sooner for potential amendments, those take time. You know, we have to send them in. They have to be properly worded. That work takes time, and so we do have a timeline here that we're working towards. This is a little bit of sort of deja vu, like when we had Bill C-22, when we had all of these, all of these people that were sending in submissions, and we didn't even have them all by the time we were working on this. So, we didn't get them all by the deadline when we had to come up with potential amendments and then working on the clause by clause. So that was really unreasonable, and here we are again. It's like a deja vu where we're in a situation that we're being asked to rush things along. We don't want to delay this at all, but out of respect for all of the people that have sent in submissions, it's not appropriate and it's not respectful to them to not even have all of their information to us before we can potentially come come with amendments. So, I mean, that's just a really unreasonable request, and I question why we're here. We have a timeline that we're working towards. I mean, if anything, we should be bumping ahead the clause by clause, because even the timeline itself is really tight from when we have to have any amendments in, and then we're doing the clause by clause, because it's really only a couple days. We have to have, right now, we have to have the amendments in, and then the clerk has to do their work, get to us, and then look at clause by clause. So it's just really unreasonable that we don't even have all of the testimony in, and we're being asked to start making decisions that do take time. So that just seems really unreasonable, and the clerk doesn't even have an idea, as we just heard. So it's a few days so that we can properly do this, so that we can properly have all the information would be appropriate. You know, as well, we have to remember that the agreements with the provinces are signed, and so it's not like there's a there's a delay in anything. The agreement's already signed. It's not like they're waiting for this legislation to then have the government go and start negotiating agreements with the provinces. So here we are solidifying things, and we have our due diligence to do. So. I'll leave it there. I might come back, but I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair.
Madame Sachs, then Madame Ferrari, and Mr. Long. So we'll turn to Madame Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and having been just arrived on the committee specifically for C35, I don't really have a point of reference on C22. I have noticed that chunks of witness or testimonies are coming in submissions. I'd like to ask the clerk if these are submissions in translation that are after the March 17th deadline date that are being submitted now.
They were before the deadline.
Okay, and are we only looking at submissions from until the deadline that are being held up?
For the most part, there was some correspondence we're getting translated to you that did not qualify per se as a...
Would that be deemed inadmissible if it's after the March 17th deadline date?
For the correspondence, people can write to the committee whenever they want. So.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Ferrari.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I'm pretty dumbfounded, actually, I'll be honest. I can't believe we've brought these witnesses here who are ready to testify, who were here to represent the welfare of the child, and now we're having this discussion when we could have easily done this in committee business, and now we have to make all these people who have waited to testify wait. It's quite embarrassing, if I'm going to be honest. So I'm the critic, as some people may know or may not know, for families, children, and social development. And it has been a huge, huge undertaking for myself and my team to take all of the correspondence, because there are so many families, so many parents, so many child care workers, ECEs who are deeply impacted by this bill. And so if we're not listening to them, if we're not talking about this, I'm not sure that we are doing what we were elected to do. I know we have child care providers, resource network that is here today, and one of the things that they have said that the Child Care Providers Resource Network, CCPRN, is committed to and focused on the well-being and safety of all children. And isn't that the truth, Mr. Chair, when we should be focusing on all children when we look at a child care plan? They're not a nonprofit charitable organization with a network reach of more than 4,800 parents and caregivers across the province and beyond. And it is their mission to provide information, training, resources, and support to those providing child care in a home setting. Now, this part is really, really important. Mr. Chair. And I want everyone to hear this because this is what we should be listening to right now. Childcare is the care of a child regardless of who provides the care. Parents, grandparents, friends, or relatives, in-home nannies, and or home care providers, both licensed and unlicensed. That's a lot of people. There are 2 million children under 6 in Canada. And if we are not listening to all of these people, we cannot get this bill the way that it should be so that it doesn't collapse on itself and fail Canadians. You know, when we look at Bill C-35, it is supposed to be this universal childcare bill, but there's nothing universal about it. In fact, it is set up for winners and losers right now, the way that it is currently written. And we on this side of the House, the Conservatives, are fighting to ensure that everyone is a winner, that we have access for all Canadians. So all these families who are on wait lists that are thousands of people long get access. So if this is legislation that, quite frankly, is already in place with the provinces and territories, as my colleague Ms. Gray has pointed out, what are we rushing through if we need to listen to all voices to make sure that all voices are included? What are we doing here? I want to talk about this email that came in today, and it says, "Thank you so much for speaking out for all Canadian parents of young children following the recent self-congratulatory announcement of $10 a day childcare in Newfoundland by the leader of the Liberal NDP coalition government." These are not my words. This is an email, Mr. Chair. As a retired systems analyst, it begs the question of whether anyone in the coalition spent more than 5 minutes developing this misguided debacle. Did no one ever consider the all-important impact on childcare providers who, when those services were clearly known to already be in short supply? Or was this just another clumsy virtue signaling attempt, rushed to completion, hoping no one but those mothers requiring childcare would understand how poorly thought out it was? I have a daughter in Newfoundland who began looking for childcare provider immediately after giving birth, 10 months ago, since she is or was planning to return to work in June and resume her engineering career. She's still looking. There are no doubt tens of thousands of other working mothers in the same position all across Canada, and even more women considering joining the workforce if the prospect of spending the greater portion of their income on childcare expenses is no longer an issue. Did no one ever think of that? Help wanted signs abound all across Canada, but with the current inflation, minimum wage earners can hardly afford to drive to work, let alone pay for childcare. How does the Liberal NDP plan help those families? Think of how many women could return to the workforce, provide for the welfare of their family, and contribute to the economy if only this government had been more diligent in developing a sensible childcare plan. Instead, all the Liberal NDP plan is offering mothers is a $10 coupon to shop at a store with empty shelves. If this Liberal NDP coalition government sincerely intends to help young families, they need to address how to stock those shelves and not just hand the store keys to provincial governments and
Point
walk
of
away
order, Chair.
congratulating themselves
Point of
for
order,
mission
Chair.
accomplished. That's for...
I have a point of order.
It seems that my colleague, Ms. Ferrari, is now reading text rather than talking about the actual amendment in front of us. I encourage debate on timelines and making sure that we get through this work plan in an efficient way. And, you know, there is an appropriate time to share the thoughts of stakeholders, and it's not while we are debating the actual timeline for the work, so that we could actually hear from our witnesses today and get on with things.
With all due respect, Mr. Chair, we
Ms.
had
Ferrari.
the Liberals had the opportunity to hear from the witnesses when I put forth the motion to listen to them right away and to leave this for committee business. So now it is on me to ensure that we do have this discussion so that all voices are heard, because you're pushing through something that needs to be thought out well so that all children are cared for and that this bill includes everyone. Right now, it has winners and it has losers.
Point of order, Chair. I ask if my colleague could stick to discussing the work plan
That's
so that we
exactly
can.
what I'm talking about.
It seems she's.
Yep, Miss-
I'd argue relevance, Chair.
It's fine. Ms. Ferrari, just keep your comments to the motion.
Thank you. And so to the motion of ensuring that we get everything in on time, that we are listening to all of these families and all of these people who didn't get a chance to come testify because we already compromised, quite frankly, on the amount of meetings. I can't rationalize what the rush is from the other side if these agreements are already in place and we actually want to ensure that this plan that they say, in their words, is going to enshrine a national universal child care plan. If that's the case, then what are we rushing through here, Mr. Chair? Because we have to listen to all of the voices to ensure that there are no losers. The number one thing in the bill is flexibility, accessibility. And right now, based on just the witnesses we've heard, there isn't accessibility, Mr. Chair. We don't have that. So how are we supposed to solve something, a piece of legislation that's going to live on
Point of order,
and
Mr.
help
Chair.
children?
Let's come back to relevance here. We're not debating the bill, we're debating the timeline. I don't think
But
this
that is
relevant.
it.
I don't agree. I simply don't agree.
And I don't agree that you didn't just let witnesses that have come here to do their job speak.
It's not me that's holding up the witnesses, Mr. Chair.
So the motion that we have.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order.
Ms. Gazan?
So, I think there's an echo. Is my sound okay before I go on?
Yes, your sound is fine.
Okay. So, I understand what my colleague, Madame Ferrari, is saying in terms of holding up witnesses. I feel like we are holding up witnesses sooner. I do feel, I have to be honest, Chair, I do feel rushed to get this legislation through. I know how much it would have meant to me as an early childhood educator and certainly a single mom. And I'm hoping that we can stop filibustering, everybody in the room, stop filibustering so that we can respect the witnesses, so that we can get care to families. I like working with everybody in the room. I work with other members on other committees, but I really want to get to this legislation. It is a critical legislation that I think we all want, and we can disagree. Let's move forward and, get it done. I think we can work together.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What my colleague is talking about is very relevant, and what we have to remember is that the NDP and the Liberals voted to not leave this till tomorrow. So it's a little disingenuous for anyone on that side to be saying that, because that's what the motion was. That was the amendment that my colleague made, and they voted it down. That was the amendment. So I think what Ms. Ferrari is talking about is very relevant.
That's not fine. The discussion is on the motion of Ms. Sachs. I would remind all members, keep your comments in relation to the motion, which was the 2 days.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the amendment, as I have it in front of me, that the amendments be submitted to the clerk of the committee in both official languages no later than 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, April 11th, 2023, and that the clerk of the committee write immediately to each member who is not a member of a caucus represented on the committee and any independent members to inform them of the study of Bill C-35 by the committee, and to invite them to prepare and submit any proposed amendments to Bill C-35. So just for clarification, Mr. Chair, if I can, the clerk of the committee write immediately to each member who is not a member of a caucus represented on the committee. Can I have clarification what you mean by that?
But I'll ask the clerk to comment.
Yes, there's a number of members who are not part of a caucus, and we write to them on top of everybody else to inform them of the study of the bill.
Okay, so independent.
You're on all committees when you notify for clause by clause.
And so it also says here that they would suggest that the committee consider during the clause by clause study of the bill, and the committee begin clause by clause consideration of the bill on April 18th, 2023. So I guess what I'm asking is, why is losing 2 meetings, because this was the reasoning brought forth on the floor, they said, oh, well, we had the President of the United States visit, so we lost 2 meetings in our regular committee. I'm not understanding how that would mean that moving the deadline sooner makes any sense rather than later. I can't get, there's no logic there. So I'm just confused about that as well. And so I guess to go back to what my NDP colleague said, if we're not, why are we rushing a lot of what we need to do to make it right, as I've been saying repeatedly in this? And so that would be my question. It just doesn't seem to make any sense why we would move a deadline sooner, and what would be the difference? Because originally, as I believe it was proposed, and if I could confirm with you, it was supposed to be the 13th. Is that correct? April 13th, clerk?
There was never an agreement on that. It was a suggestion in the calendar.
Okay, so it was never agreed upon. So, yeah, I mean, we lost 1 meeting, 2 meetings. So I'm not sure I'm understanding why we would move the deadline sooner and not later when we've actually been pushed back. So I'm not understanding that. So I guess, I think what we really have to come back to is what I've been trying to say in terms of this motion is, how are we supposed to have everything done? And also, if I could, Mr. Chair, what is you had said this already, Clerk, but what about the translation of all the documents? Do we know how many submissions we've had to the committee at this point?
Point of order, Chair.
We have a point of order. Ms. Gazan, what is
I just want to
point of order?
clarify what I was sharing since I was mentioned. I'm just encouraging us to work together. I think we all have good intentions. We have certainly different opinions on what that looks like, but I think we all have good intentions, and I'm just encouraging all members of this committee, and I'm a guest for this bill, to work together collaboratively to get to work on the bill. And I feel that, as this conversation goes on,
that is
it's
debate.
been
It's not
40
a point
minutes.
of order, Ms. Gazan.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ferrari, back to you on the motion, and I will hold you to your comments on the motion as is procedure.
Sure, and I was just asking the clerk about those timelines in terms of submissions and how many there are.
Yeah, we're halfway. Half of them are still with translation at the moment, roughly.
So they're halfway through. So would we not need more time, I guess, is what we're trying to figure out here, because if that's only half, then you need to do the translation.
Yeah, well, we receive a few every day, so we're moving along. It will take a few more days, but we don't have a precise deadline in terms of when we will have received them all.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Chair, I think we're in a situation here as we have these great witnesses that are waiting to give testimony, but as I've said, I did make a motion to get them to speak as soon as possible so that we could do this not on their time. They have obviously some important things to address. But I think what we're looking how do we include everyone if this is supposed to be universal? And when I did this in the House, when I debated this bill in the House, at the second reading, yep, that's where yep, of course. I talked about universal, so how are we supposed to get all of the feedback in this time frame? I just can't understand how we're going to get all of that done if we're going to include all of Canada and all of the forms of childcare, which I referred to earlier in terms of the Childcare Providers Resource Network, which is a witness here today that would like to share their stories with us. Obviously, childcare is the care of a child, regardless of who provides the care, parents, grandparents, friends, or relatives, in-home nannies and or home child care providers, both licensed and unlicensed. So, we need to ensure that we are doing this. So it's 2 days we're talking about. So, I think we saw that there isn't collaboration right off the top from the other parties, in particular the Liberals, because I said, well, of course we can talk about this. It was a friendly amendment, as you said. Okay, no problem, because we're looking for. We'll chat about that tomorrow at committee business. We have all these witnesses that have come here to talk about C-35 and how do we strengthen this bill and how do we fix it and how do we ensure that everybody has access, because that's the fundamental part of the bill. So, I think that's what's a little bit frustrating. I think if we could, is there opportunity here to discuss? Can we have another amendment to this motion that we can, change the clause by clause date to 1 week later? To give us more time? Can we discuss something like that? Is that an option so that we can get to these witnesses, which I think is really important? So that we can ensure that the clerk and everybody can get. There is so much information, and I know my colleague across the way doesn't. I have listened to thousands and thousands of families, thousands. This bill is not ready to go to the floor.
Bring your comments to the motion that's
Thank you,
before
Mr.
the
Chair.
floor,
Thank
which is
you.
not the bill, it's the 2-day extension. It's the 2-day reference.
It
Ms.
is about the 2-day reference, because if we could have some collaboration, if the welfare of the child really is at the crux of this discussion, what are we voting no about me saying let's talk about it tomorrow? Like, it makes no sense. Like, why did you do that, or what, Mr. Chair? Why
order,
did they
Mr.
through
Chair.
you, Mr. Chair?
We have a point of order. Ms. Ferrari, state your point of order, Ms.
I
Sachs.
would just like to clarify that this process was supposed to be 6 meetings in total to end on April 18th, and this was a friendly amendment for the simple reason that we are extending time. I encourage my colleague to stick to her debate on looking at the timelines.
Thank you, Ms. Sachs. That's
all I asked, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ferrari, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I'm trying to understand that I'm trying to do the job that we were elected to do, which is listen to everybody and try to get it done in a timely manner and try to get everything in. And how do we make sure that this bill right now, because as it stands right now, quality, affordable childcare is a wonderful concept. But if it is not accessible, it does not exist. So these timelines, back to the motion, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. We're back to the bill again and not to the issue that's on the floor.
Again, I'll remind you, Ms. Ferrari, to keep your comments to the motion.
Point of
on the
order.
floor.
It's a real point of order.
They're all real until I get to hear them.
Okay,
Ms.
good
Godot,
point.
point of
So we have witnesses on the next round, right? At this point, do we have 2 sets of witnesses, right? From 7:30 to 8:15
Correct.
is the second
Yes.
set. At this point, do we have enough time for them to be witnesses?
We will conclude at 8:30. So we're now.
There's a vote.
So I'm just saying that if I'm just asking a question
Well,
around
obviously,
process.
yeah.
If we don't have enough time, if we've exhausted 45 minutes already, should we let the second group go based on the fact that we may not, and if not, what time do we actually say it's time, you don't have to stick around because they shouldn't be waiting that long. And the
what I said
second
at the
point
very
is,
beginning.
maybe I can suggest we take like a 3-minute recess and try to figure something out.
That is procedurally, Ms. Ferrari has the floor. The witnesses are here, and the witnesses are scheduled for the second hour. Should we get there, I cannot predetermine that, Mr. Coteau. I have to resume to Ms. Ferrari unless somebody wants to ask for a suspension
No, but I'm
for a
saying,
period.
sorry, Mr. Chair, but I'm saying that even, like right now, it's 7:15. If we hear from the witnesses the first round, it's going to be an hour. Then we'll be at 8:15. Then we got 15 minutes of committee business, right?
That's correct, but Mr.
So-
Coteau, I have to return to Ms. Ferrari, who has the floor. Anybody can ask for a suspension at any time, and I'll
would it help?
consider it.
A motion to suspend for 3 minutes?
Not a motion, you can just request.
A request to suspend for 3 minutes?
Do we get
then,
agreement
of course,
from
the
the
member
committee
gets
to
the floor
suspend
back.
for a few moments so you can consult?
I don't think that's what,
So, no, we don't have
I
consensus.
think it's,
Yeah, if
Mr.
there's no
Coteau-
consensus, I'll withdraw it.
Okay, I have to
request.
return the floor to Ms. Ferrari
thank you.
on the motion.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think to Mr. Coteau's point, I mean, that's exactly why I put forth what I put forth, and then you guys voted no, which is why I'm sitting here going round and round and round. And I was like, okay, we'll talk about this. This is totally talkable. Let's talk. Let's work on this. And then, no, everybody says no. Well, okay, so now here we are. And now we have these people waiting, and we're back where we started. So I think, do we add an amendment at this point and say, okay, can we change the clause by clause date to 1 week later? Then that would give us more time. This is what we're talking about, is ensuring that we have enough time. That's back to the motion. It's all about time. In staying with ensuring, and I keep looping it back, so that we can hear from all of these thousands and thousands of parents and people who work in the industry who are not comfortable with the way that the bill is currently written. So if we don't strengthen it here, then how is it going to get fixed? It's not going to. And then the Canadian families who rely on us to make legislation that works, we've just all failed. So, is there an opportunity to add an amendment? I guess I will ask again to change clause by clause date to 1 week later, and then we can debate that.
An amendment at any time.
Yes, so I would ask that we could add an amendment to the motion put on the floor to change clause by clause date to 1 week later, so that we can at least have this time of what I'm talking about, of hearing from everyone. Because now we've also pushed these poor witnesses into, the parliamentary wormhole of life. So I would say April 20th, if we could add an amendment, Mr. Chair, to change clause by clause to 1 week later of April 20th would be the amendment I would propose.
Okay.
25th. April 25th? April 20th to submit, April 25th would be the 1 week.
Okay, we have a amendment to the motion. I will ask the clerk to read the amendment so everybody's clear.
The amendment is to change the time to submit the amendments to April 20th, and the clause by clause change that portion for April 25th, 2023.
Okay. The amendment, I will ask the clerk to call a vote on, Ms. Gray. Well, unless nobody puts their hand up.
Yep.
Okay. Ms. Gray, on the amendment of Ms. Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, this is really all about giving members enough time to listen to the witnesses. Oh, sorry, there's someone that doesn't have their. There we go. this is all about giving members enough time, and when we're looking at the timeline right now, and why this is reasonable, moving the clause by clause, pushing it actually further ahead, is because the actual motion that we're debating here today talks about independent members, and they're listed right in the motion, and how in fact that gives them very little time, the members that aren't sitting on this committee. So in fact, moving this forward, the clause by clause, even forward a bit more, does give members time to other members other than the people sitting on this committee, time to look at this, and so I think that is reasonable for the motion that Ms. Ferrari put forth, because this is really allowing us enough time to have proper scrutiny, not only the people on this committee, but also the independent members, the ones that don't sit here every day. And we heard from some other members that they sit on two or three committees. So it's plus all the other work that we have to do. So this would really allow everyone, because all members do have an opportunity to put in amendments. I know that when we were doing Bill C-22, we did have a member from that doesn't sit on this committee that it brought forth numerous amendments, and a number, those were all debated, and there was, I can't remember the exact number. I know for sure there was one that we had voted on, that everyone had voted on the amendment that was actually then put into the legislation. So that's why it's really important to have all members, including independent members, have the proper time in order to really scrutinize what this is and be able to put their amendments in. We also know as well, Mr. Chair, that it takes time. You can't just write amendments overnight. It has to go to legal, and it's really important that we get it right for us at this committee, but also for independent members. So moving that date ahead to look at clause, and then of course the clerk has to. We don't know how many amendments are coming forth. Mm-hmm. It could be one. Could be 100. We really don't know. We see that with other legislation. So, the clerk's office has to be able to put everything together, to categorize. I know that when we had it for Bill C-22, they were kind of looking at, okay, here's amendments from different people, from different parties, from different individuals that are similar. It all gets categorized. You can't just do that in a couple of hours. So we really do need the time to do this. And the other thing as well is the clerk does have to prioritize amendments. So they really look at where there's duplications, which one would come up before others because of who would submit an amendment first. There's a lot to consider. And so to try and rush this all into a couple of days for an important piece of legislation like this it's not just a, couple line private members bill. Like, we're talking about a substantive piece of legislation, and so it's really important that we do this properly. So I'm in support of extending the timeline on this, so at least we can have time to go through the amendments, because again, we don't know how many there'll be. There could be a substantive number of amendments. And also talking to other members here. I know that on Bill C-22, the previous, it was. I know that we've got different people on the committee here, but I had a great working relationship with the counterpart on the Liberal side. We would look at what some ideas were. Of course, without disclosing confidence, but just kind of looking at ideas. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened here so far. With this piece of legislation. So we had this sort of dropped on us today without any type of conversation. Mm-hmm. And so it's, to hear members talking about working collaboratively and good intentions, that's, there was no pre-conversations here. But that's an aside. Anyways, going back to the sub-amendment that we're discussing here, I think it's very reasonable to look at the timeline, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Falk, are you on the committee now? Just a moment.
It should be.
Okay, who? Because we have Miss Roberts, who's actually,
That's okay, let her go. I'm just gonna stay and be nosy.
Well, you can participate, you just
Thank
can't
you.
vote. Yeah.
Miss Falk, point of order?
Am I permitted to speak here?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. I was just wondering, because we've had some subbing and I'm just coming in, I was just wondering if I think it's a sub amendment. Could that be repeated, please? I just want to make sure that I'm away, I'm virtual, I'm in transition. I just want to make sure I'm not missing what's going on.
Yes, but that's true. I do not believe that's a point of order. It's left to committee members to keep themselves current on what's in, and there was a member sitting on it. I will repeat the motion before it's voted on. Who had the floor? I'm going to Miss Sachs, who had her hand
Well,
up, unless Miss Gray
Miss-
finished. Yeah, okay. You interrupted. It was Miss Gray, was it? Okay,
Yeah, that's
Miss
right, I
Gray, you
was-
have the floor.
That's right, Mr. Chair.
Un rappel au règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order. Mr. Chair, I would like to say that it's really important to take this Thursday evening for our to hear our witnesses. I'd like to thank the witnesses for being here, and I'd like to apologize. I'd like to know if, because of this very long discussion, will the witnesses be invited at a later date?
Thank you, Madame Beyroube. That's left to the committee. I'm simply the chair. I ensure that the committee functions properly, and the discussion currently before the committee is within the committee's order and mandate. At 7:30, though, the first hour will conclude, and the witnesses that were scheduled to appear will be excused at 7:30. If the committee will have to choose later, I'll go through. So on your point of order, am I clear on that, Madame Beyroube? Okay. We'll return to Ms. Gray, and then the next person that has the floor is Madame Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll just reiterate that when this was presented forward,
Oh, yeah, it was.
Concluded. She had the floor when the point of order was raised by Madame Beyroube.
No. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I hadn't, there was a couple points of order there. So yeah, it's still my time. So just going back to the sub-amendment that we're discussing here, and I mean, the reason why we're here is because, in fact, some members of this committee had voted down the point that we had wanted to discuss this when we actually have committee business for discussion, literally, 14 hours from now. So, I'm not sure why that was voted down or what the rationale is, and this also goes as well to a lot of committees will have a subcommittee, which are usually the vice chairs, that discuss the work of the committee. And this committee, we haven't done that. I brought it up a couple of times, and there doesn't seem to be really much of a desire for that. And so we do spend a lot of time at this committee talking about what we want to talk about at committee. And this committee does have a more proportionately high amount of legislation that comes through it than other committees. So legislation always takes precedence. But again, going back to the sub-amendment here for the 25th,
Ms. Gray,
but I'm setting it
return your
up.
comments to the sub-amendment.
Right. Well, so where I'm going with this is that here we are having this discussion, that could have happened outside of this committee room, and on the 25th. I think it's very reasonable, based on the rationale that I've given, that we should allow more time. I mean, we're literally talking about a few extra days here, so that seems to be very very reasonable. So I'll leave it there for now on this sub amendment, and then we'll see where it goes. Thank you.
And then Mr. Long. No, it was Ms.
Thank you, Chair. So with regards to the current amendment of moving the dates along, I do recall in my notes in preparing to come to committee that on February 3rd, this committee adopted 6 meetings that were supposed to conclude on April 18th, including clause by clause. So the amendment that was put forth, and now we're on a sub-amendment of timetables, was really, as mentioned, to put us on track, to reset us. There's always the opportunity, if we'd like, to meet next week virtually with witnesses. I'd like to make sure everyone has their time. This wasn't meant to be a filibuster, as my conservative colleagues are putting on the floor here. It was that we lost days and wanted to put us on a calendar track. April 11th gives 12 days. 12 days for amendments to be submitted, and then a subsequent week after that for them to be contemplated, which is well within the normal timelines of committee business. And again, so, you know, my colleagues are putting down to push it further ahead and further ahead. I'm trying to keep the committee on the timeline that it set for itself, recognizing that we were supposed to be done this legislation on April 18th. The original motion was to begin clause by clause on April 18th. So to waste witness time, I'm more than happy to call witnesses back.
Point of order, Chair.
Next week, but to ask for,
Sorry,
I'm not
point of
supportive
order.
of
What
this.
is your point of? Please state
I'm not
your.
supportive of this amendment.
Sorry, please state your point of order.
My point of order, Mr. Chair, is that committees are their own domain. The parliamentary secretary should not be telling or lecturing our committee of what the schedule should be.
That's not.
We hear
a point
over
of
and
order.
over in
Ms.
the House,
Fogg,
and you say yourself, Chair, that the committee is its own domain.
It is, and that's why the committee will choose by majority. Ms. Sachs has the floor.
Chair, and certainly the committee is its own domain, which is why I am sharing what the committee's decision was on February 3rd to complete this entire legislative process by April 18th, and out of a genuine desire to hear from witnesses, to ensure that the train continues on its track, we provided a timeline to ensure that we could get through this legislation in a timely manner. I am open to the contemplation of meeting next week if we have to make sure we get all our witnesses in. It's the Passover holiday for me. I'll be taking time off to do that out of a commitment to this committee to see this legislation through. But to spend so much time on what was a simple process to keep us on the track is highly disappointing, Mr. Chair, to see from my colleagues who have been filibustering us here for well over an hour at this point, or just over an hour actually, is really unfortunate, because the collaborative nature of this was to actually follow the committee's previous will on February 3rd and make sure that we're staying on the same page. Clearly they're not on the same page, and that is unfortunate, that the committee seems to, or members across the way don't want to contemplate a timeline in an effective manner. Thank you.
Am I allowed to say something?
No, Dr. Jeppe, not at the moment.
Okay.
Being it's now 7:30, gone beyond 7:30, I'm going to suspend, and I will apologize to the witnesses that Ms. Ferrari, I as chair am suspending the meeting at 7:30 as was scheduled, so we can transition to the next group of witnesses as per the schedule, and the debate can resume at that time if anybody wants the floor. So at this time, I want to thank the witnesses for coming, and I would ask if you would simply submit your briefs in writing to the committee, which they may not have been. And with that, thank you for coming, and I'll suspend the meeting so we can transition to the next hour. Thank you. to take their chairs, I'm going to call the meeting back to order shortly. Okay. Committee members, I will call, where are we at? Call them, welcome back. The committee will resume its study of Bill C-35.
Point of order. Oh, I thought you were done.
Let me finish.
Okay, sorry.
The committee will resume its study of Bill C-35, an act respecting early learning and childcare in Canada. To assist the interpreters in their work, I kindly remind all members witness appearing today to introduce themselves when speaking and speak slowly. You have the option of choosing to speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available. Should interpretation services be lost, please get my attention and we'll suspend while they're being corrected. I remind all members, including witnesses, to direct their questions through I, the chair, and wait until I recognize you. Those appearing virtually, you have a raised hand icon at the bottom of your screen. Please use it to get my attention. Again, all comments are addressed to myself. I remind everybody screenshots are not allowed. In the meeting, I will introduce the witnesses. We have appearing Kim Hiscott from the Andrew Fleck Children's Services. Welcome. We have Marnie Flaherty from the Canadian Child Care Federation, Acting Chief Executive Officer. And from the Ontario Association of Independent Child Care Centres, we have Maggie Moser, Director, Board of Directors. Before I turn to the witnesses for their opening statements, the committee had a discussion point, was in a discussion when we suspended from the earlier hour. I see before me, I have Ms. Falk with your hand
Point
up.
of order. Yep, point of order, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if you could please clarify if you have a speakers list that was carried over earlier, or if you're starting a new speakers list. And if you have a speakers list, if you could just let us know who's on the list, Mr. Chair.
Yes, the questioning list starts with Madame Ferrari.
So no, I'm talking about we had
Oh, sorry,
hands up
okay.
before we briefly suspended.
sorry.
So I'm just wondering if you've kept on with that speakers list, or if you're starting a new list, and if you have a speakers list, if you could
No.
just let us know what that speakers list is.
I'll return. Thank you, Ms. Gray. I had Mr. Long, and then I had a hand up from Ms. Roberts, and then Ms. Ferrari. And now I see Ms. Falk with her hand up as well. Mr. Long, did you?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Wasn't Ms. Falk? Didn't she?
Yeah,
have the floor
Chair,
before
you had given me the floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you,
she
Mr.
was.
Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Long. Ms. Falk, you had the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I understand how with my intervention earlier, I was just trying to get clarity of where we are to make sure that we weren't wasting time, and I wasn't really afforded that opportunity. So it's disappointing for me. So I guess I'm just wanting to understand. I understand that there was an amendment that was moved and or not an amendment, is it an amendment? Whatever was moved, the motion that was moved. See, I'm trying to understand what was going on. That amendments be submitted to the clerk of the committee in both official languages, no later than 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, April 11th. That the clerk of that committee write immediately to each member who is not a member of a caucus represented on the committee and any independent members to inform them of the study of Bill C-35 by the committee and to invite them to prepare and submit any proposed amendments to Bill C-35, which they would suggest that the committee consider during the clause-by-clause study of the bill, and that the committee begin the clause-by-clause consideration of the bill on April 18th. So I understand that that was the main motion, but I understand then there was a sub-amendment, if I'm correct, and that was to change some dates. I believe it would have been April 20th and the 25th, if I'm understanding this correctly. It's unfortunate for me because I feel that this is a trend over and over and over and over and over again by the Liberal NDP coalition we're seeing it in the House right now. Debate is being limited on something that's very, very important and that we've heard a lot from Canadians on. And now what's concerning to me is we're seeing this also in committee as well. So there was I don't understand. Like, I get that through you, Mr. Chair, MP Sachs, I understand. I understand that she's not happy that she's not getting her way. That she, or not even just her, but just from the remarks that she had said, this could be the whole Liberal NDP coalition, not happy that we're just not in agreement. We are just wanting to make sure there is a thorough job done on witnessing or on hearing testimony from witnesses from as many child care providers as possible. This is a very big country. And I think we would be actually doing a disservice to parents like myself. I do have 4 young children. I did say that in the previous meeting as someone who has had difficulty finding childcare. I know the real frustrations, just like actually I can't find formula on the shelves either. I have a young baby that's not even
Ms.
1 year
Falk,
yet. So
Ms.
I know
Falk,
I'm getting there.
Ms.
I'm
Falk,
getting there.
yes, but Ms.
feel
Falk, I have the floor. Please respect the chair. Keep your comments to the sub-amendment that's currently on the floor, which is the relation to the dates.
Absolutely. So the real frustration that I feel regarding the things that I have not been able to access, and I know other Canadian parents have not been able to access, I feel if we don't do a thorough job on this, and really from the 11th to the 20th, and then the 13th to the 25th, we also had this conversation too with the speed up in another previous legislation. I think Ms. Gray, MP Gray, had alluded to that in her sub-amendment comments. It's just a troubling precedent that I see and that I'm living. But I just think we're doing a disservice by not giving the time to hear from witnesses and do our job thoroughly how we're supposed to. I do want to just say too, Mr. Chair, if I may, in response to MP Sachs's comments about us having an agreement on a February 3rd meeting for an end date. I just don't know where that is, because when I pull up the committee business from the committee website for the February 3rd meeting, it states the committee proceeded to the consideration of matters related to committee business. It was agreed it was agreed that 6 meetings be dedicated to the consideration of Bill C-35, which is an act respecting early learning and childcare in Canada, commencing Tuesday, March 7th, 2023, including a technical briefing from the relative department officials, an invite to the Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development, accompanied by department officials, witness testimony, and clause-by-clause consideration of the bill. It was agreed that the context of the consideration of Bill C-35, an act respecting early learning and childcare in Canada, committee members submit their prioritized witness lists to the clerk of the committee no later than Friday, February 24th,
Ms. Falk,
2023.
Ms. Falk, we're
so
not
my
dis-
point being,
Well, bring your comments to the sub-amendment that's currently on the floor for debate. It's not the witness
Chair,
list.
through you to you, Chair, that is what I am doing. MP Sachs was allowed and permitted to speak about an agreement. She was not told to bring her comments to the sub-amendment.
Yes, I did.
I am
Ms.
responding.
Ms. Falk, I did ask Ms. Sachs to bring her comments to the sub-amendment. And I would ask you to do the same, to bring your comments to the sub-amendment that was moved by Ms. Ferrari. And just before you resume your comments, Ms. Falk, I want to advise the witnesses that currently there is a procedural motion before the committee that the committee is debating and discussing, which is in the prerogative of the committee members, and that's why we're not getting to the witnesses for your opening statement. So I just want to clarify, but the committee is within its prerogative to have this debate. Ms. Falk, back to you for comments on the sub-amendment.
Thank you, Chair. I guess what my point was is there wasn't an agreement. So I'm just not understanding why the Liberals are telling us that we're prolonging this when there wasn't an agreement. We had agreed to the 6 meetings. That is what is in the minutes. And it's unfortunate because what is the big push? What is the big push of 9 days? I don't understand, and it's unfortunate. Like it's very frustrating, Mr. Chair, because there is this what's the word I'm looking for? There's this brush being painted that we're holding this up, which is not the case. From what I understand, I said this too. This kind of stuff should be discussed in planning meetings. So to the witnesses, I'm so sorry that this is happening and that the Liberals and the NDP want to not do this planning outside of these meetings and are actually eating up witness time. And I just don't see the justification in the argument to move this up, especially when we have 2 riding weeks coming up here with major holidays in between those riding weeks. So not only are our witnesses, we have to be respectful of our witnesses when it comes to rescheduling for them as well. And I feel that moving this
the sub-amendment,
original
your
motion,
comments, Ms. Falk, your comments should be to the sub-amendment of Ms. Ferrari, which was to change the dates, not the original motion.
Right.
So the dates.
I don't see how so the original dates are not sufficient. What is being proposed by the Liberals to move this from the 11th to the 13th under the false pretense that there was an agreement which I had read the minutes from that, the agreement that was being referred to, which there was no agreement. And now this is being thrown on us. I don't see why the Liberals and the NDP coalition cannot agree to the April 20th date and the April 25th date. I mean, Mr. Chair, we also had tried to...
Ms. Falk, that sub amendment never got adopted because that's what the discussion is. So nobody disagreed with it or agreed with it because this committee did not vote on it. Yeah.
I guess, okay, so it wasn't a formal vote, Mr. Chair, but it was remarks from the Liberals saying that they didn't disagree with it.
But the committee hasn't adopted because we're still debating the sub-amendment of Ms. Ferrari, which was 2 dates in question. We're not, that's what the current debate is.
I guess the Liberals had already said, MP Sachs had already said during the debate she didn't agree with it. So I would assume that's what her would translate to her vote. She would vote against
assuming
it.
What somebody's going to do is not debate. It's
right, but isn't the point of a debate to hear each other's side? So I'm expressing why I don't agree with what the Liberals have proposed in the comments from MP Sachs. So Chair, am I not permitted to do that?
You should focus your comments on the sub-amendment that's currently before the floor of Ms. Ferrari. And I will move to another speaker if you are concluded your comments.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Long, you had your hand up? No? Okay, next on my list was Ms. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I must say I'm enjoying this committee and the debate, but I don't understand why a bill as important as the one that we are about to discuss, why we don't have the opportunity to have that information in front of us so that we have the opportunity to review all the witnesses. This is an important bill, and I'm a little insulted because as a single mom myself, and as many of my constituents who have called me and said they can't find spaces. Why are we not giving our constituents...
It's not relevant to the dates recommended by her colleague, Ms. Ferrari. I'd like to keep the debate in line with the timelines. Thank you.
Okay, so...
Please keep your comments to the sub-amendment made by Ms. Ferrari, which was simply to move to consider 2 additional dates.
Well, I think that the sub-amendment that my colleague presented to the team is fair to every single one of us to have the opportunity.
Point of order, Chair.
Ms. Falk, you raised a point of order?
Yeah, I'm just, can you give some clarification here? I understand that the sub-amendment is dates, but in order to debate something, you need to be able to explain why, what supports your reasoning for these dates. And I just don't understand how...
Ms. Falk, as long as the debate stays focused on the 2 dates, and that's what Ms. Roberts is doing now, she has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the point I'm trying to make is I would have appreciated an opportunity to ensure that any of the witnesses' testimony gave me an understanding of what we are here. We are the servants of our constituents. We are here to serve them. I believe that in the best interest of this committee and in the best interest of Canadians right across this wonderful country, that we take the time to ensure that all the witness information is presented to this committee so we can have open dialogue, open and honest dialogue. We can't do that if we don't have the time. By providing us with this time, it will allow us that opportunity to present a proper amendment and a proper documentation to the rest of the country. This is a very, very important bill, and I'd like to thank my colleague because I'm a little offended by the my colleague across the way, and I really enjoy her company. So Ms. Sachs, don't take this personally, but I was in that position and I could not find daycare. I was a young widow and left with 2 babies that I had to find care for. I could not find it. I have constituents calling me and having their parents move from another province to come to where they are currently residing
Point of order,
because they
Mr.
can't
Chair. We're
find.
relevance.
The relevance here is,
It's
don't we have a
sub-amendment
right
that
to
we're debating,
listen?
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair, there's a sub-amendment that we're debating.
Van
Well-
Buyden is correct. It's the sub-amendment of Ms. Ferrari.
Right,
which
and
is
I
to
agree with that
extend the
sub-amendment,
date.
but I want you to understand that we
Keep
have
your-
an important
please keep
job
your
here to listen to our.
comments to the sub-amendment, Ms. Roberts.
I understand that, Mr. Chair, I really do, but I think it's important that we take every precaution that we possibly can to understand and listen to everything that's in front of us so that we can make the decisions that Canadians expect us to make. This should not be rushed. This should be done on a timely manner. However, it has to also accommodate our opportunity to witness to review all the documentations put in the amendment. We don't have that. And it's not even in 2 official languages yet. And from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, from what the clerk said, they're only halfway there anyway. So I don't understand how we can possibly do that. I, myself, and MP Ferrari are on another committee, which we will be traveling across this country in the second part of the riding week. We need to make sure that those documentations are thoroughly understood so that we can come back to this committee and have an open and honest conversation. That's what I think that we need to do. I think if we continue that, I think we can all get along, all have an opportunity to have an open conversation honestly so that every single person in this committee has the right to voice their opinion. I understood as a newbie, as an MP, and I'm a newbie, so please excuse me if I'm not 100% understanding of what's going on, but I think if I'm going to represent my constituents, I'd like to hear what they want to say. And I'd like to represent them based on my riding, based on Canada. What is best for this country? Again, I say to you, we are their servants. We are not the masters. We are their servants. Give us an opportunity to please listen to each and every member to understand that we have a right to make decisions that are going to benefit the entire country. This is an issue for all parents, and as a female and a young mother, a widow of 2 children, let me tell you, I did not have a 9-to-5 job. That was not my luxury. I wanted to make sure I could support my children. How can I support my children if I was put in that position today with the young children to make sure that they had daycare when I can't find it? So if we don't have the spaces...
Point of order, Chair, respectfully to my colleague who I do enjoy time with, truly outside of this chamber. I'm also a single mother. I've not raised it once during the debate. I've ensured to stay within the guidelines and the timelines.
Okay.
I asked respectfully through you, Chair, to keep relevance.
Ms. Roberts, the sub-amendment that's currently on the floor for debate is to change the dates.
Right. And I'm making a point that I would really appreciate the opportunity to do that. I would really like to understand everything that's in this amendment. And I would like the time to make sure that I fully review it so that I can bring objective conversation and debate with my colleagues across the floor and everyone have an opportunity to share. Isn't that what we're here to do? We're here to make sure that we listen to each other and we bring those points to the floor. That's my conversation. That's what I would like to do. I'd really appreciate it if we could all, I think this is a great group. Thank you for having me here today, but I also think that we can come to a mutual understanding. It's a simple request that we're asking. We're not asking for more than that. Give us the time to do that. That's my comments, and thank you very much.
Ray had your hand up to speak to the sub-amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think when you had ran through the list, I thought that you had Ms. Ferrari and then I was after, or did I? I think when I'd asked for the list earlier on,
You to
I
Ms.
wrote
Ferrari.
it down and I think it was Ms. Ferrari and then I was after. Is that correct? Or am I first?
Not from my list.
Okay.
but
Well,
anyhow.
okay. If
I do have Ms. Ferrari.
you do have Ms. Ferrari, but she's after myself.
Yeah,
Okay. Just for
because
clarification.
Mr. Long conceded his spot.
That's right. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, just as we're talking about this date, just to clarify for the witnesses that we do have here today, is at the very beginning of the meeting, the government side had put together a motion to amend when we would be when they wanted amendments from the committee. And basically what it did was, and there was conversation that happened, where we realized that we would not have all of the written testimony before we were able to basically write whatever amendments we want. And so we had heard from the clerk that we've only received half of the written submissions. And they didn't have a deadline or a timeline as to how long that was going to take. And the motion was dropped at the very beginning of the committee. So there was no written notice like is usually precedence. There was no conversations with ourselves. It was literally dropped. And we had heard that the written submissions that we wouldn't even have them. And yet we, as members of Parliament, are then to go away and potentially write up amendments, and the government wanted to move that deadline closer. So we would actually be writing amendments without having all of the information from Canadians that have written in submissions. They're sitting with the clerk's office right now. They do great work, but it takes time to translate. And so we had put a sub-amendment to say, let's just discuss this when we had committee time scheduled to do this. And just so that you're aware, the NDP and the Liberals voted against that, which is why we're here. We actually wanted to push it ahead for when we had time allocated. And so now we're dealing with the situation where we have another sub-amendment when we're looking at our timelines here in order to be able to do what's called clause by clause. And so we think that we've made a very reasonable request by giving just a little bit of extra time so that we can properly review things. And that's where the discussion is, just so that the our witnesses that are here, so that they're aware as to what's going on. That's the reason why we're in this place here. Talking about the timeline, and I know that the government had representatives had made comment about missing days. Well, I just want to note that one of the reasons why we missed some committee time was because the government had tabled their budget. And so that's all on the government's timelines. That was their choice when they tabled the budget, and that is why we had a committee meeting cancelled. And so so here we are now sort of pushing everything ahead, but still with the original motion that we had, there was no specific dates given. And so, there were discussions, but there were no specific dates as to when specifically we would be doing the amendments and then the clause by clause. And so now having this new information is why we're discussing the sub-amendment in order to have proper time in order to review all of the potential amendments that might come from different parties and be able to have the time to review them, and then now, start the clause by clause within a more reasonable time period. As I had mentioned earlier, but it is applicable now, when we were doing Bill C-22, we had members not on this committee that had put forth amendments, and all of that takes time. And we need time to go through them and prioritize them. The clerk needs time to prioritize them, see what similarities they are, see if there's duplications. And so, just moving ahead, based on the sub-amendment that my colleague gave here, to literally just give us a few more days is I think very, very reasonable. The amount of time that it takes to potentially go through whatever sub-amendments we might be presented, we don't know. There could be one or there could be 100, and we need time to do that. So I think that this is a very reasonable request to just give a little bit more time. I think the date that my colleague gave is very reasonable. It's not like she gave a date that was in, at the end of May. It was literally just a few extra days so that we would have time to go through whatever amendments might
Point
come
of order,
forward.
Chair.
And so the date that she's
Point
given.
of order.
Yeah.
Respectfully, through you, Chair, my colleague, Ms. Gray, has said the same thing about 3 or 4 times now. It's been quite repetitive. She shared her thoughts on the volume of submissions. She shared her thoughts about time. She has shared her thoughts about reasonableness and the date. And if she has nothing new to add to the discussion, her points have been well taken. And I'm sure there are others who would wish to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Sachs. Ms. Gray, it is a point of order. Your comments cannot be repetitive.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But just to clarify that I was referring to the sub-amendment and how they're applicable. When I was talking earlier, it was to the general motion. So we're talking. I'm talking about the sub-amendment. So even though I might have made reference in a different form, they're very relative to the sub-amendment. And my comments at that time didn't have anything to do with the sub-amendment because we didn't have a sub-amendment before us. So therefore, those comments are very relative. Even though I had maybe made some similar type comments earlier, they weren't with the context of the sub-amendment that we're dealing with. But anyways, I'll move on.
Standing Order 11 states that you cannot be repetitive in the comments, so you have to expand your subject matter. Ms. Gray, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. The other thing that I want to mention is that we actually don't know how many written pieces of testimony are waiting for us to see. I mean, the clerk had made comment that we've received about half of them. I'd have to go back and actually count how many have come in. It's been quite substantive. I've spent quite a bit of time going back and reading all of them. I archive them and then go back.
Point of order,
so,
Chair.
We don't know how many are coming.
Point of order.
Ms. Gray has said this statement several times during this filibuster that they continue to discuss. Her points have been well taken and noted, and I'd like to see her move on.
Thank you, Ms. Sachs. And Ms. Gray, I'll remind you again, the standing order states you should not be repetitive in the same comments.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. So going back to look at the date that we're looking at, we basically have, if we look at the calendar here, we basically have literally a few more days that we're giving this. The other thing, too, is that we're still staying consistent with how many meetings were originally in this particular looking at this piece of legislation. Originally, when we were looking at this, we wanted more meetings so that we could actually have a little bit more time because it's so important. But we agreed to the 6 meetings, and so we're still staying within that. So this is not an extension of having meetings. I think I'll probably leave it there, and I think Ms. Ferrari is up next. But I'll just say that I think that her motion is very reasonable, and I definitely support it based on what we have before us today and the new information that we received today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Ferrari, on the sub-amendment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I just have to acknowledge the witnesses. I'm sorry you are part of a parliamentary procedure that is painful. For the sub-amendment, but I think it's important that we acknowledge the witnesses who are critical because that's actually what we are debating when we talk about the sub-amendment. And it was brought forth by myself. There was a motion put forth on the floor to close amendment submissions and clause by clause, and I said we would discuss this later. I said we could discuss this during committee business, not during witness testimony, which chews up your valuable time. And the Liberals and NDP voted no. So here we are trying to ensure that all voices are heard, so that we can ensure that Bill C-35 is done correctly. So I have also put forth a sub-amendment to further this so that we can actually get to the crux of what we're trying to do as elected officials, which is make sure that legislation is not set up to fail, but it is set up to serve Canadians. And so the sub-amendment, and we would definitely, I will ensure that we can get you back witnesses as soon as we can. The sub-amendment that I've put forth has been submitted to the clerk that of the committee in both official languages no later than 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, April 20th, 2023. So not far when you think that we have 2 weeks of constituency work. And that the clerk of the committee write immediately to each member who is not a member of a caucus represented on the committee and any independent members to inform them of the study of the bill C-35 by the committee and to invite them to prepare and submit any proposed amendments to Bill C-35, which they would suggest that the committee consider during the clause by clause. So the way that we're looking at this is, we need amendments, then we got to go through clause by clause to ensure that everybody agrees or disagrees, or to strengthen this bill to its absolute strength, study of the bill, and the committee begin clause by clause consideration of the bill on April 25th, 2023. So we're back in the same round and round discussion of why we need these dates. And the reality is, as we've heard already, half of the submissions are in. We need to translate all of that. We need time to listen to all of it. The other issue is that you cannot make amendments, Mr. Chair, through you. You cannot write and create amendments until you have listened to every witness, because we have to listen to every witness, we have to listen to every submission, we have to read every submission so that we know that we are listening to what they're saying so that we can put forth amendments that strengthen this bill. Even when we look at one of our witnesses who never even got to testify tonight because of this circus.
Ms. Ferrari, to the sub-amendment, which is the 2 days.
This is for the sub-amendment. Less than 25% of Ontario children accessing licensed childcare, the new Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare, or CWELC as many people know it, excludes more than 75% of Ontario children and families. So that's just Ontario. So if we're looking at those numbers and we need those submissions to strengthen this bill, we didn't vote against this. We are here to work with you. And yet you want to, through you, Mr. Chair, we are in this nonsense, and it's ridiculous. If we are really here to serve people, we need to strengthen this bill. And the reality is we have so many wait lists. This is actually setting the provinces up to fail if we do not do this properly, and that is what, back to the sub-amendment, if we do not have this extension, I'm not asking for years of extension, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. We're really wandering from the discussion of the sub-amendment. Let's get back to the sub-amendment.
I'll ask members to
on
keep
relevance.
their comments to the relevancy of the sub-amendment.
I think we may have a different definition of what the relevance of the sub-amendment is. If we need time to listen to people to write good amendments.
That's my point of order, Mr. Chair. Not relevant.
How is this not relevant? If we're talking, the sub-amendment is to increase the time so that we can listen to the witnesses.
You have the floor, Ms. Ferrari.
This is, again, we're just confirming what I'm saying about the Liberals not listening so that we can get these things done properly to protect Canadian families. People are waiting. This is an opportunity to fix a bill. Really make an impact for the rest of humanity here, of Canadian future. We've been talking about childcare since I was in childcare. This is one of the most important bills put forth on the floor of the House of Commons, and I want to work with my colleagues as the critic.
Ms. Mosher, one of the witnesses, has her hand up. Ms. Mosher, was there a clarification you required? Ms. Moser?
I just want, yes, hi, thank you, and thank you everyone for having invited me here. As a witness, I just wanted to ask, after an hour and 15 minutes of listening to this discussion, if I can leave at this point. It looks like you don't have any intention of hearing the witnesses this evening. Is this true? Will it be rescheduled?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Mosher, I want to hear the point of order from Ms. Gray, and then I'll get back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're still in committee business, correct? We're still in discussing the sub-amendment?
Yes.
Right, so therefore, we're discussing the sub-amendment. That is the sole focus of this. So with all due respect, that's still what we're discussing, correct, Mr. Chair?
Correct. We're on the sub-amendment, but I recognized Ms. Moser because she had her hand up. I'm not sure if she had an issue, but Ms. Moser, the committee is scheduled to go to 8:30.
And point of order,
and-
Mr.
Point of
Chair.
order, Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Gray, and then
Point
I'll
of
go
order,
to Ms.
Mr. Chair.
Falk.
I just wanted to clarify that this committee was actually going till 8 o'clock because we were expecting bells to be ringing originally at 8 o'clock. So if the witnesses weren't informed of
No,
that.
it was scheduled to 8:30.
Yeah, because bells were going till at 8, right? So so just for clarification, that this committee was ending earlier because of votes that the government has chosen to do in the House of Commons. So this committee was unfortunately going to be ending earlier than scheduled.
Speaker, if we want, I'm sorry, Chair.
I'm sorry,
the
I had a
bells are
point of
there.
order.
Just a moment. Ms. Mosher, I will get back to you. I have Ms. Falk and then Mr. Coteau, but the bells are ringing, and I cannot continue the committee unless there's unanimous consent to continue. Do I have unanimous consent to continue?
No.
Okay. With that, then we do not have unanimous consent to continue. With that, I will adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned.